Hey, how's it going? It's John Suntress, and welcome to Word Balloon. You found us. That's excellent. If this is your first time, please consider subscribing to us via iTunes or Stitcher or certainly Last.fm and all the various places you can find podcasts. Word Balloon is invariably there. Subscribe. Please let me know what you think of the show. Write ratings over at Apple's podcast platform and give me a review. You can say nice things. You can say lousy things. You suck, John, and let me tell you why. Happy to hear your feedback either way. But do me a favor and like me where you can and leave comments. And also, as always, email me, john@wordballoon.com. I'm interested in your feedback. I'm interested in what you're thinking about the content that I put here. Also, I have a YouTube channel under Word Balloon. Would you please consider subscribing there? I've got about 400 plus subscribers currently. I'd like to get to at least 1,000 and start generating more video content. So go to YouTube and click on the Word Balloon channel and please subscribe. And now back to the show. Terrificon is back. The Terrific Comic-Con, devoted to, what else? Comic books and their creators, returns to Mohegan Sun Expo Center in Connecticut. The 3-day event features the largest gathering of comic book writers and artists. The largest of its kind in New England is on August 9th through the 11th. Terrificon producer Mitch Halleck promises this year's event will be the best con he's ever produced, with today's top talent like Tom King, Donny Cates, Ryan Stegman, Clay Mann, Liam Sharp, Derek Robertson, plus legendary creators Jim Steranko, Chris Claremont, Jim Starlin, Jerry Ordway, and in his final con appearance, the one and only George Perez. Terrificon will be celebrating Batman's anniversary, as well as featuring actors from the Bat films, Billy D. Williams, Robert Wool, and Val Kilmer. Plus, Doctor Who's John Barrowman, The Flash's John Wesley Shipp, the voice cast reunion of Animaniacs, and Pinky and the Brain, and lots more. See for yourself why Terrificon is summer's hottest Comic-Con, this August 9th through the 11th, only at Mohegan Sun. For more information and guest list, visit Terrificon.com. It's terrific! Hey everybody, welcome to the weekend and welcome to Word Balloon, the comic book podcast and conversation show. John Suntress here. Very excited about today's guest. Alex Segura is back. Alex is the editor-in-chief over at Archie Comics and also is a great mystery novelist. His Pete Fernandez mystery series, I've been following it since day one. Silent City was the first book, and he's actually about to release the fifth book on August 13th, and that's Miami Midnight. And that's going to wrap up the series. I was surprised to hear that, but Alex says why in this conversation. He's not done with with novelizing, if I can use the word inappropriately, with book writing, novel writing. He's going to continue to do that. But we talk about that. I can't help it. I'm always fascinated by the differences between the mystery writer conventions and comic conventions. And Alex goes into some detail on that. Of course, we talk about the Archie Universe, everything that's happening. Katie Keene going to get a big media push in the fall with a new TV series on the CW. And the Archie horror books are doing well. Now the Archie throwback books are interesting. You know, we had 1941 earlier this year with Mark Waid and Brian Augustyn. And they are back with a new book, and that's 1955. Really excited about that. We get a little glimpse of that through Alex. And a whole lot more of what's happening in Archie. And then also, we can't help it, it's the 30th anniversary week of Batman89. It happened earlier this week. The actual Friday anniversary date, it was obviously released on a Friday. I think it was released on a Friday, but the actual release date in the summer was just a few days ago, marking the 30th anniversary. And Alex and I remember it very well, and we give our thoughts on Batman89, comparing it to some of the other Batman eras, and just a whole lot more. It's a really good freewheeling conversation that starts with Archie and the Pete Fernandez books, but goes into a lot of other comic conversation that I think you'll enjoy. Alex Segura on today's Word Balloon. Now, it's all brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. We're at the end of the month. Thank you, League, for your support via Patreon, subscribing to Word Balloon. While it's not necessary, it certainly is appreciated. If you like what you hear on Word Balloon, if you think my content is worth listening to every week or every month, is it worth the price of a comic book to you? Is it worth $1 a month? If you can swing it and you want to help out the cause, you can go to patreon.com/wordballoon or click on the Patreon ad at wordballoon.com. It will take you to my Patreon page, and that's where you can subscribe. But thank you for the hundreds that do, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon is also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. Now, it's funny, because the official word came this week that Vertigo is shutting down. DC shutting down Vertigo. We all knew it was coming. Actually, maybe it was last weekend when they had the ALA Expo, the American Library Association Expo, that they made a big deal out of it. A lot of people are bummed because Vertigo really struck a new voice in comics when it was founded, and they took books like Sandman and Swamp Thing that started in the DC Universe. They put it over at Vertigo. Lots of other great titles followed in its wake and wonderful creators. If you are missing that Vertigo vibe, may I suggest Aftershock Comics might be the solution to that itch, because they've got great creators writing some very cutting-edge books that aren't afraid to take risks. I'm talking about books like Marguerite Bennett's Animosity, Garth Ennis's Walk Through Hell, Dark Arc from Cullen Bunn and Juan Doe, Baby Teeth from Donny Cates, even more things, of course, like Dark Red from Tim Seeley, and Stronghold from Ryan Kelly and Phil Hester. And also other great books that are starting up in the next couple of weeks. Now, one that already started, Joe Pruitt's horror anthology, Shock. Also coming up soon, Cullen Bunn's Knights Temporal. This month, Chris Sabella's Trustfall debuted. And in fact, we'll be talking to Chris in just a couple days. And later on this year, Matthew Klickstein's You're Obsolete, to name only a few. These are books that cut through genres and take readers far beyond their comfort zones. In the weeks ahead, we'll have more talks with Aftershock creators about their books, but you don't have to wait. You'll find full story descriptions, great art preview pages, and the diamond codes on these books to order through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk to Alex Segura about his great mystery detective character, Pete Fernandez, but also mystery novels in general and comics, and the great Archie line. The Archie Universe is doing just fine, and Alex is one of the big reasons why. So let's now talk to Alex Segura of Archie Comics and fine novelist, now on Word Balloon. Alex Segura, welcome back to Word Balloon. A long time since we've talked. Good, welcome back.
Yeah, it's been too long. Thanks so much for having me. It's always a treat.
Excellent, man. You got a new Pete Fernandez mystery coming up very soon?
Yes, in August, Miami Midnight, which is the fifth in the series. And, to many fans' disappointment, it is the final one, at least for now. It's,
interesting. Okay, why?
Yeah. Well, when I set out to do the books, I realized that I wanted to kind of, having a comic book background, I wanted to tell the origin story of a Private Eye as opposed to meeting him midway. When we meet Philip Marlowe or Lou Archer, they're pretty well established and they kind of know their way around. With Pete, it was much more year one, and then it became year two and year three. And, I'd like to think that by the end of this book, we'll know where he's going, and that can go in its own way. And I can revisit that at some point. Never say never, but for now, these opening 5 books are a nice little arc, and it shows you how he goes from this total mess, this total washout of a person to actually something else.
What else can you tell us about the plot of the new book?
Well, the story starts out with Pete, following up on the 4th book, Blackout. He was not in a good state, not in a good, he almost dies. And so at the beginning of Miami Midnight, he's kind of settled into this fairly cautious life. He's running a bookstore in Miami. He's separated himself a little bit from his friends. He's still working the program, sober, nothing, he's just kind of settled down. He's running a bookstore. He's taking it easy, not taking any new cases. And, then this aging Cuban gangster reaches out to him and says, I want you to find out I want you to find out the woman that married my son. And his son died. His son was a drugged up jazz piano player on the Miami scene. And the mystery there is the gangster claims that this woman stole a painting that's of great value to him. It's a great, it's a lost Cuban painting that, had sentimental and also financial value, but Pete refuses, and he thinks that's that, and he goes back to the bookstore, and he's approached by an ex-Miami cop, a retired cop, who says, has anyone talked to you about your mom? And if you've been reading the series for a while, you know that as far as Pete knows, his mom died at childbirth. He has no relationship with her. He doesn't really know her. He was raised by his dad, and his dad's friends, and those were kind of his parental figures. But when this cop tells him this, he gets this rush of what he can only say are memories. He feels this rush of sensory stuff, like holding her holding a hand or crossing the street or the smell of her perfume. And it really jolts him to the point where he starts to pull the thread. And as you read the book, you realize that this is his biggest case. It goes back to literally his very beginning. And, it was an interesting ride. And I think it was probably the only case that I could have closed out the series with.
That's cool, man. No, that sounds great. I don't want to get too ahead of yourself, but are you planning on a different main character and trying to do a new series? Is that the plan? Or, what do you want to do with your noveling, your novel writing?
Yeah. I'm going to do, I'm working on a standalone, which the plot is still coming together, but it'll be set in a different time. It'll be in the 70s. It's going to be hopped from Miami to New York. It'll be a different protagonist. It'll definitely be a mystery. There will be a murder. But I'm really psyched about the setting and the backdrop, which I don't want to talk about too much yet. But it'll be different. But I think the tone and what people like about the Pete books will still be there. And I'm excited to kind of populate my little Segura verse with a new new title
and a new location. That's cool, man.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
And that's great. And New York in the 70s. There's a million different backdrops I can think of. So
yeah, it's just a cool time period. And I'm looking at the early 70s, and you've got so much stuff kind of percolating. And just the political stuff. There's a lot of fertile ground to even just scratch at. Just to add for flavor. So I'm excited about that.
That's cool, man. That's excellent. Are you doing any mystery conventions? I'm always interested in the mystery conventions as much as the comic conventions or the writers.
I know they're so different. And when I go to BoucherCon or Murder and Mayhem,
that's the Milwaukee one, Murder and Mayhem.
Yeah, there's one in Milwaukee and there's one in Chicago. But some of the authors will be so fried. They're like, wow, this is so intense. And it's like, have you ever been to San Diego, or New York Comic Con? That's, when you're pinned against a wall because, Ben Affleck is walking by and you can't escape.
Yep.
But they're fun. They're much more intimate. It's
sure.
We were just before we hit record, we were talking about Terrificon and these kind of smaller Comic Cons, and it's more like that. And some of them are really just in a hotel. You rent a room in the hotel, you go into the panel rooms in the hotel, and you really don't leave the space. So you really get to know the fans that are there for the weekend, and you see them at your panels, and it's very intimate and kind of cool. Whereas a bigger Comic-Con like San Diego, you're basically in a city. You're
absolutely.
You may see someone in passing. Like I think last year I saw Didio for a minute and I waved at him and that was it. And
yes.
And it's usually people you want to actually have a longer conversation with, but it's so big, you're never going to really connect with people for more than a second. But at the smaller shows, you can have chats and you can really hang out and spend time with them, which is nice, especially with readers. You get to connect with people that love your work, and it's like an adrenaline boost to the process because we're here pecking away at our books in solitary, and then you go to these things and kind of run the gauntlet of socializing, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. Someone's reading these. And in terms of the ones I'm going to, it's a little bit trickier. We just had a baby, so she's 2 months old.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Congratulations. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, it's so it's a little bit harder to travel, but we are doing BoucherCon because Blackout, my fourth novel, was nominated it's in the best novel category, so that's exciting.
Oh, that's great. Do they have is that an Edgar or is that a different kind of award? What award?
It's the Anthony Award, so it's named after Anthony Boucher.
Oh, of course. Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy because it's me, Laura Lippman, Megan Abbott, Lou Burney, and Jennifer Hillier, and we're all nominated for best novel, and it's exciting because I don't know. I mean, you've been along for the ride since the beginning. So I think we did an interview when the book first came out.
Yeah.
So it's really a validation, and it's just nice that people are reading and liking the books. And I did an interview earlier today where I was chatting about Florida Crime, Miami Blues, the Charles Willeford book,
yes.
which is fantastic. And the interviewer said, well, he's part of the same pantheon. Your character's kind of part of the same pantheon as Hoke Mosley. And I was like, really? Is that really happening? It's just cool to have contributed something to the conversation.
Absolutely, man. No, that's great. And I do love how really good detective series, the city is such an important character in what they do. And Spencer's Boston, I've always been fascinated by that. And especially given that I still haven't gone to the city itself.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Nathan Heller's, Max Collins, great Chicago detective and everything.
Oh yeah, he's fantastic.
Yeah, and and Max knows, he's a Quad Cities guy, and he knows Chicago, and no, it's you appreciate the authenticity of.
Did I tell you my Max Allen Collins story?
By all means.
So I'm at Comic-Con. I think I'm at DC. This is maybe around 2007 or 8, and working San Diego. And Will Dennis, who's a good friend of mine.
Oh yeah,
he was at Vertigo at the time.
Yep.
And he knew I loved crime novels, and in fact, he handed me a lot of the ones that were very, influential, like the Killer Inside Me, and Raymond Chandler and stuff like that.
Cool.
So he tapped me on the shoulder and he says, "Max Allen Collins is here," and I'm excited because I know Max's work, obviously.
Oh yeah.
So I shake his hand, and I'm bug-eyed, and I'm like, "Wow, I really loved the Dick Tracy adaptation you wrote." Like,
good Lord, yes.
Yeah. The novelization of the movie.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that specifically. But yeah, everything he's done Dick Tracy West. But go on.
Right. So, and I'm just gushing about how cool it was and what a great novel it was. And it was one of the first novels I read as a kid. And Max is very polite and very excited. And, who doesn't like to meet a fan, I guess?
Well, sure.
Yeah, and then Max walks away, and Will turns to me, and he's like, "Dick Tracy? The movie novel?"
Of all the things that he wrote, exactly.
Yeah, of all the things that he wrote, that's the first thing that comes to mind. And I'm like, well, whatever. What are you going to say? It's literally, and I did get to run into Max. I interviewed him recently for something, and then I saw him at a BoucherCon 2013 or so, and we just happened to be walking from the
no problem.
Sorry.
No worries. Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. Big city living.
Exactly. No.
Yeah, so we're walking back to the con, to BoucherCon, and I told him the story, and he just, he didn't remember it, obviously, but he was very, very polite, and that is my claim to fame with Max. But he's great.
He was among my first Word Balloon interviews, and because initially Word Balloon was going to be a video documentary. And
right.
I was gonna, I had him obviously with Road to Perdition, and certainly his Dick Tracy comic strip work, and Nathan Heller and everything. And he's, he's always at San Diego. I'm sure you know this, but I'll tell the listeners. He's always had these, the writers that write paperbacks that are adapted from television and film and the like, and they get together. I think they even I don't know how it's voted, but I believe they even have their own little mini awards at a panel at San Diego and everything, and it's for those things. And it's Jonathan Mayberry and Marv Wolfman was there because of a couple of his recent novels that were based on DC Universe things. And Max is great because I even remember when I first talked to him, he was doing CSI and doing the IDW CSI comics, and they're good. Right. And I mean, it's just Peter David's another great example of that, where these guys just really get into whatever the source material is, and they do great, whether it's a novelization or an original story.
No,
based
I mean,
in
licensed
universe.
Publishing is such a different track, and you have to have a really different mindset because they're not sent out for reviews or blurbs in the traditional kind of original novel sense. It's its own animal, and you have to have a really workmanlike mentality. Max does it. Peter David's Star Trek novels are fantastic.
100%. Completely agree.
And the funny thing, too, is that Max obviously did some amazing work on Dick Tracy, I had that kind of flirtation where I almost wrote Dick Tracy, which is kind of its own weird story. But, he's great.
Yeah, was that with Archie? Wasn't Archie for a second going to do, or were you going to do IDW's Dick Tracy? What were you going to do?
It was just there was just some confusion with the rights. We had been talking to Tribune, and they thought the rights were clear, and they weren't. So it just became a thing where we got to the finish line, and then they realized, we can't do this, and it's fine.
Does Warren Beatty still have the option?
I don't know. I think he's got to be somehow involved. Otherwise, they'd be adapting the heck out of it.
Sure. Well, I remember, too, when Oming and Bendis had told me way in the past, early 2000s, they were possibly going to do it. And again, Tribune, Beatty told Tribune, at least I still have the option. I get to do what I want. And it's funny now that Oming is doing Dick Tracy at IDW, and it's great. I mean, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It's really good. Yeah. And so you never know. Maybe someday. I was really, that's first script, which I co-wrote with Mike Moreci, is probably one of my favorite things that I've written. So hopefully I'll either find a way to reuse it for something else, or you never know. Comics is a very weird circular business.
That's funny. Chicago's Mike Moreci?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy, man. That's funny. I was just occurring to me. I'm like, I should call him. I went to the store today, and I missed new comic book day yesterday, but I noticed like the last issue of his most recent Battlestar Galactica is out there.
Oh, yeah.
Plus every other project he's got going.
He's great. He's just one of these unsung guys that cranks out consistently good stuff. He's really good, and we're good pals. He co-wrote the Batman 66 Archie crossover with Jeff Parker and did a really nice job.
I believe it, and those were fantastic. I really enjoyed those, and those covers especially was. I mean, it's always good to see Archie crossover with something interesting. And man, you guys have been right there. I mean, whether it's the Predator or, you Kiss, the stuff you wrote, obviously.
Yeah. No, I think Archie just lends itself to stuff like that, and the more bonkers, the better, I think. But I think even Batman 66 isn't necessarily bonkers. It's just one of these things that you kind of feel should have happened decades ago.
100%. Oh God, yes. They both represent that decade so well. And and it was such an important decade for both properties. Absolutely, man.
Yeah, and just Dan Parent did an amazing job with the art, and it just kind of synced up. And you have all the classic villains in there. It just really felt like it existed. It felt evergreen and timeless, which is what you want from a project like that.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. Man, you got a lot of cool stuff coming up in the fall, and also, I mean, my God, the way the brand is playing on the CW and Netflix as well with Sabrina and Katie Keene coming up on the CW. I mean, this is a great time for Archie.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, the awareness is so high, and I think the challenge on the publishing side is how do we translate this awareness to how do we kind of tighten up the connective tissue between the media and the publishing? And I think the trick is just being open and seeing what resonates. And I think fans are really into these alternative takes on the characters, stuff like Jughead the Hunger, Veronica, obviously Afterlife and Sabrina. But then also being aware that there's an audience for a more kind of lighthearted Sabrina, so we did Sabrina the Teenage Witch with Kelly Thompson and Veronica and Andy Fish, and that did really well. And then obviously catering to the main line, which is the core Archie stuff. And, Mike Pellerito's overseeing Archie 1941 and 1955. And those are really fun historical books. And I mean, 41 was fantastic.
41 was amazing, man. Yeah.
Peter Krause really knocked it out of the park with the art.
It was beautiful. And Brian and Mark did a great job writing it. Absolutely. Loved it.
Yeah. So I think we're doing pretty well in terms of covering all the bases or giving fans a lot of options in terms of what they buy. And I think the rub on Archie maybe 15, 20 years ago or even earlier when I got into Archie was, you read the digest and then you had nowhere to go.
Right.
For me, it was like I read the digest and I was like, okay, these are cool. Oh, wait, there's Spider-Man. And so I would hop over to Marvel or DC and then you kind of leave the classic stuff in the dust. But that's no longer the case. Now we have we announced this partnership with Little B, and they're going to be doing some kids' graphic novels. We're doing a lot of YA-centric stuff.
Makes sense. Sure.
And and then there's classic Archie, there's horror, there's traditional Archie, and then there's stuff that caters directly to the people watching Riverdale. We do a Riverdale comic that does really well for us in the book market, and it's a presence in the comic shop, so I think people can see it, and that connects it to them. So, I think the buffet is much bigger.
100%, man. No, it was things like, and I don't even know if he did this for Archie, but like Cliff Chang had that great, the Archies as a 90s band or whatever. And I don't know, was that done for the company or was that, did Cliff?
It was done for a Hero Initiative book, if I'm mistaken. But we did, when I was co-writing the Archies with Matt Rosenberg and Joe Eismo on art, for the final issue, we did reach out to Cliff and say, hey, can we kind of repackage this as the cover? Because it's such a cool cover.
Oh, my God. It's amazing. Yes.
Yeah, it was so iconic. And I just wanted to – because I've been bugging Cliff to do a cover, but he's, one of the busiest people in comics.
He's Cliff Chang. I understand.
Yeah, exactly. He's like super.
Everybody wants Cliff Chang. Absolutely, man.
Yeah, so it was a nice way to get a Cliff cover on that book. And it was perfect because it was the last issue. And it's such an iconic image. I have a print of that in my office. So I kind of look up at it every now and again. every day, basically, that I'm at work.
I get it, man. Well, and also for the Riverdale comic, I love the color scheme for it. And I thought that was, on top of the really cool art, I thought it was really interesting that they,
Yeah, I think aesthetically it's a much more muted palette. It's not as neon or bright as obviously traditional Archie or even new, quote unquote, new Riverdale Archie, but it's in tune with the show, which is the idea to give fans stories that fill in the gaps between episodes. But
Sure.
We're also looking at that too and seeing other creative ways we can play in that universe.
I understand, and I don't blame you guys. I think it's, again, it's interesting, and it just showed how flexible Archie can be. And I mean, there were always things like, and they were great. They were great fun. Like DeFalco did The Man from Riverdale and did like a little secret agent bent and stuff. And always great to see the superhero line come back with Pure Art and Captain Hero and Super Teen.
Or Jughead's Time Police, which we just relaunched. And that's some people didn't even know it was an older series, and then they really enjoyed finding out that there was that connection to the past. So it's really about bringing in these different voices and having them play. And what John Goldwater, our CEO, always says is, as long as Archie is Archie, he can be Archie anywhere. You just put him in any situation. As long as it's Archie the everyman or Archie this kind of just good guy, as long as the characters are true to themselves, you can stretch them pretty far. And I think that applies to a lot of traditional IP like Superman or Batman or Spider-Man.
Absolutely.
These characters that have been around so long, you can kind of tug at them and poke at them, but as long as they're still themselves, the fans will buy into whatever situation you put them in.
No, they're universal concepts. Absolutely, man. And I was going to ask, so for 55 coming up in the fall, it is Brian and Mark writing again. Is Peter drawing it again?
No, it's Tom Grummett. And,
excellent. That's fantastic. That's great.
Yeah, I was just talking. Mike and I were chatting about it. It's exciting. I mean, Tom was a big artist when I was getting into the Superman books, so it's cool to see. From what I can see, when I see the pages come in, it's neat and it's cool. I think it's going to be a great book.
No, I look forward to where they take everybody as they did in the 41 series, because God, it was so interesting seeing how the home front in World War II impacted Riverdale and these characters in particular. And yeah, it's a great idea. And so 55. It'll be interesting. Will it be Peyton Place? Will it be McCarthyism? Well, who knows? I mean, that's the great thing. And certainly it being in 55, well, that's great. That puts the Archies at the dawn of rock and roll. So,
yeah, exactly.
So
that'll be the fun part of the book, just kind of seeing what historical stuff gets woven in there.
Absolutely, man. No, that's fantastic. No, I hope it continues. I look forward to Archie 66. Although there's certainly enough reprint material to represent that, and obviously the subsequent decades as well.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, that's great. I think it's really cool. Absolutely, man. What else was I going to ask you regarding Archie? Let's see. I'm enjoying the horror stuff. Obviously, that's playing really well.
It's kind of become. I was talking to one of our artists today, and I said, "Who would have thought that Archie would be the premier horror comics picture?" It's a line I use from time to time because you look at our slate and you have stuff like Blossom 66, which is a really bonkers and creepy and terrifying take on twins and the Antichrist.
Yep.
And then you have Jughead the Hunger, which is literally the Jughead food metaphor, but turned into a werewolf story. And then Vamp Veronica, which I thought was such a fun kind of tongue-in-cheek, but also horrific take on vampires. And so I guess now we have Jughead the Hunger and Vamp Veronica crossing over, which has been neat. And I think fans are enjoying that. And it's just like there's no limits aside from the characters being who they are. You can put them in any kind of weird scenario. So I think a lot of creators are excited to work with us because, it's still work for hire. You still have to play in the sandbox, but
Sure.
The sandbox is much, much bigger than it was, I think, before John took over the company.
Understood. Well, and God, you guys had me at the Archie Life with Archie and the Married Life. I thought was
which is back.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's like 10 years later or something, right?
Yeah, it's the 10th anniversary. So, our co-president Victor Gorelick is overseeing that, and it's Mike Uslan writing and Dan Parent drawing, and I think it's been fun. It's been fun to see the scripts as they come through.
Boy, I'm gonna have to hit you up to get Mike on the show. I've been meaning to talk to him ever since he first wrote the Married Life and the when he first marries both Betty and Veronica.
Yeah, I mean, now's the time. He seems to be everywhere with the 30th anniversary of Batman. I hate calling
that's
it.
true. Batman '89. Do you really? Why do you hate calling it Batman '89?
I mean, it's just Batman for me, but I guess there will eventually be a Batman movie that's just Batman, and the dating of it has to be what it is. But
to be honest, to differentiate it too from even not only the Batman TV series, but even the original Batman the movie.
It's true. It's true. That's true.
So
I stand corrected.
No, but I understand what you mean too. It's so funny. Literally yesterday, I was on a local low power FM radio station. My buddy was hosting, and he had me on, and we were talking about. This is literally the anniversary month of the debut, or of the
Right?
It was earlier this week that the actual anniversary was of when it first opened. And yeah, I mean that's cool. It's an amazing accomplishment, and it is interesting how time has made us look at it now. I still like it a lot.
Yeah,
and what for us passed as a much more realistic take on Batman compared to Batman '66, and also obviously even what we got with Superman in '78. So it was a shift, and I think a shift in the right direction. But certainly now comparing that to the Nolan films, or
I mean, you watch the Nolan movies and they're just hyper realistic. I mean, I'm still partial to the Keaton Batman just because the Batmobile I think is cooler, and I kind of appreciate the flair. The Prince soundtrack is fantastic.
Absolutely.
But I think as fans we can also embrace things and appreciate the differences, and one doesn't negate the other. And I think I kind of wish a lot more of fandom was open to that and willing to appreciate the multitudes of something, as opposed to saying, well, this is my Batman and this is the Batman that it should be. And, well, maybe your Batman is still your Batman and there's another one that you can like too, or not like it.
I think that comes with age. I really do.
Yeah,
because I always say that even watching Batman '66, it's like it's the three stages of Batman, where at first you think it's high drama and action when you're 5 years old watching it.
Yep.
Then you hit about maybe 11 or 12 and you're like, oh, this is corny. I don't want to watch it anymore. And then all of a sudden in high school, or maybe a little later, you catch a rerun and you're like, oh, they were trying to be funny and they're trying to be goofy. And then you really appreciate the comic genius.
Yeah, it's on purpose.
Absolutely. Well, but again, for a kid, they're not in on the joke right away. Or they don't see the joke, certainly when they're 5. And then maybe when, like I said, when they're in 11 or 12, maybe it plays like a bad Bazooka Joe joke. But then you're like,
I remember renting the Batman original movie, and just watching it as a kid and just being dead serious about it.
Of course.
This is the real deal.
No, they're at the UN or whatever was passing for the UN. No, there were real consequences. Absolutely. I love it. I mean, that movie's just great. And thank God, man, I did finally. I mean, it wasn't hard while he was alive to meet Adam West because he would do so many conventions. But yeah, man, no, it's like, hey, nice going, seriously, because he was a wonderful steward of the character. And you're right. Let's focus on '89 for a second. Keaton just brought this great energy as Batman, but also that great befuddlement of not being comfortable being Bruce Wayne. I mean, I didn't think it was an act. That's not how the movie played for me. For me, it was like, this guy really doesn't know how to be Bruce Wayne, and it's just kind of like going through the motions as best as he can.
It's funny. I just watched him in Homecoming, and he's just such a great actor.
Absolutely.
He just so spot on, and he really knows how to play crazy and how to play evil or unhinged. And the scene that sticks with me, strangely enough, even I've watched the movie so many times, but as a kid, was that scene where he is Bruce Wayne and the Joker shows up in Vicky Vale's apartment, and he does the whole "you want to get nuts, let's get nuts."
Yep, with the fire poker, yes.
Yeah, and that's when a little bit of Beetlejuice comes out.
Oh, that's interesting. You see, that's good. I like that. For me, it played like real rage, and like you said, no, it's and in that moment, yeah, he was kind of secure, and he let his Bruce Wayne mask slip, and I know who you are, and it was like, oh, this is good, and I just had Robert Wool on about a month ago, and and he was saying, and I'm sure you feel the same way. Can you imagine in today's social media climate how much shit Warner Brothers would have gotten now, because they got plenty then when there was no internet and it was in the back of Comics Review or Amazing Heroes or all.
Well, we saw a little bit of it, with Robert Pattinson as a new Batman, or what? If I guess it was finally confirmed, but I guess it would be akin to, thinking of a comedian like Andy Samberg or Paul Rudd being
Paul Rudd is Batman. Sure, exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, Keaton at that point had been in Beetlejuice and had done some other kind of mildly dramatic things. I could be wrong, but it was very much. I remember as a kid, everyone was like, "This comedian is going to be Batman."
Oh yeah, it was Mr. Mom, man. I mean, it really was like it was just as vicious. I mean, that's why it's easy to be vicious now.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like, no, you actually had to put an effort to be vicious then. You had to write a letter. And you had to mail it to a magazine. But
it's also, I think comedy is so much harder to do than kind of melodrama.
Sure.
And you see it a lot with Archie, just kind of watching, the classic. It's hard to write a really funny classic Archie story. Everyone's got one in them, I think. You can do one. But to do it in and out and, for years and years, and that's when you start to appreciate like the really classic Archie creators that have been doing it for so long. So that transition from like funny Mr. Mom, Michael Keaton to The Dark Knight, he had those chops. I just think he was using it in a different way. And it really, I don't know. I'm still impressed by that movie.
Oh, me
Maybe
too,
I just need to watch it again. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. And again, I think it holds up for what it is. But yeah, like I said, I mean, it's just our expectation for a realistic Batman changed with the Nolan movies and even the Snyder movies and that. But again, I love it. Well, and I also point out every Batman casting move has been questioned by the fandom. And the one time that I don't remember anyone really getting angry and going, "Oh no, that's a good choice," was and now I'm blanking, George Clooney.
Really?
I never heard any bad things about Clooney's going to be Batman. For me, it was like, makes sense to me. Big, dark.
Yeah, I think it was a good choice. Man. Just the material was
exactly. Yeah.
So bad.
Yeah.
I don't. Was there blowback for Christian Bale?
That's a fair question. No, you're probably right. Maybe there wasn't.
Yeah, because I think when that happened, I was like, okay, this is perfect. Growly fat voice aside, he was a pretty good. Yeah.
Oh no, I thought he was a great Bruce Wayne too. I mean, a really really good Bruce Wayne. I mean, and that's the thing. And now I'm thinking back. I don't remember there being blowback about Kilmer either, because I think Val Kilmer was kind of on the right trajectory.
He had just done The Saint too, which I think people, or maybe The Saint was after. I could be wrong.
I think The Saint was after.
I think that's what he did after not doing another Batman.
Yeah. So yeah. Speaking of The Saint, I haven't watched it yet. It's on Netflix. You probably know it being again, The Saint kind of falls in that mystery adventurer sort of genre. Around 2013, they made a pilot for a hopeful new Saint series. Eliza Dushku was in it and everything. And Roger Moore was not only involved behind the scenes. I love the fact that when Roger Moore signed to do The Saint back in the 60s, he got a piece of the show and really was an active producer. And ever since then was always involved through the rest of his life with any Saint things that happened. But both he and Ian Ogilvy are in this pilot. And I think they even suggest that Simon Templar is part of some secret organization, and maybe it does go back to the Templar Knights. But it was really cool that clearly Roger Moore was like a spy master in the movie and stuff. I don't know if you ever saw that.
No, I didn't get to see it, but that is neat that he was so involved. I mean, I guess it is kind of a weird mirror image to like Warren Beatty and Dick Tracy just being still tied to this idea. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. You get attached to a certain version of your character. It's hard to disengage.
Well, and he was, obviously being one of the biggest Bonds as well. I mean, it's interesting. Are you? How do you feel about Bond 25 coming up?
I'm into it. I like Daniel Craig. I'm not a hardcore Bond guy.
Oh no.
No. I've watched a lot of the movies. I like Daniel Craig. But I'm kind of agnostic about it. It's not. I'm not super passionate about it.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm less of a spy thriller guy and much more of like a private eye noir guy, like film noir.
Sure, absolutely.
So you were talking about Batman '89, and I was reading Mike Cronenberg's interview with Sam Hamm, which he did in back issue,
yep,
yeah, that special issue. And then I was listening to this very podcast, not to get too meta, but I heard your interview with him, which I thought was a lot of fun. And you guys really got into the weeds of boxing, which was interesting to me. I'm not a big boxing guy, but I was as a kid. My dad was.
I would hope so, being a Miami kid, man. You got Fifth Street Gym right there.
Exactly.
Angelo Dundee's own haunt and everything. I got to hang out with Angelo a few times. He was amazing.
Oh wow!
Oh, he was great.
Yeah, no, we were big Roberto Duran fans, Sugar Ray Leonard, and a lot. That was a very crazy era for heavyweights too, like the '80s, late '80s, early '90s.
It was an up and down heavyweight division, but thank God the middleweights, good Lord, and the welterweights with Hearns and Leonard and Hagler and Duran. Really, I mean, you could keep going. Guys like Aaron Pryor and Wilfred Benitez. But anyway, yeah, it was a great period for boxing. Certainly, maybe even the last great decade, because the '90s wasn't that great.
No, it wasn't. I just remember everything kind of fell off the cliff after Tyson came back. There was so much hype. Who was it? Peter Manili? What was his name?
Yes,
Peter...
the Irish kid he fought. The first kid he fought, the comeback kid. I was Ralph Nader on that pay-per-view. I swear, I was on the Chicago sports radio station. I'm like, look, this is not worth $50. He's going to blast that kid out. Do not spend the money. I'm like,
well, I think I was at my dad's house, and he did spend the money, and was very disappointed when the fight lasted. I think less than 2 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I think the guy curled up into the fetal position at one point.
Well, I remember he got, like, after his first knockdown, he got up and was literally skipping around the ring.
Yeah,
and it was just really weird. Yeah, it was really
even
weird.
At that young age, I knew this was not a good boxing match.
No, there's much better ones on YouTube. But Mike is great. And yeah, I love how Mike is involved in actually, a lot of great worlds. He's very big in film noir. He's very big in horror, classic horror. He knows his comics and does a lot of back issue graphic work and everything. And yeah,
he's a great designer. And I think we're friendly just because we have feet in similar worlds. He's into comics and crime and film noir. And, I read that film noir magazine and.
Great magazine.
Yeah, there's just a lot of good stuff out there.
That's Eddie Muller's, for people listening. If you watch Turner Classic Movies, their film noir host, they do it on Saturday nights at midnight, and then they repeat it the next morning, Sunday morning at like 11. And it's a great TMC feature. But yeah, he's part of Noir Alley, which is kind of this roaming film festival of classic noir that he takes from city to city, and it's a big presentation. Again, very much like the author conventions we're discussing, and certainly Comic-Con atmospheres as well. I was going to make a point when you were saying about how comedians it's tougher and everything, and that they bring a better or at least quality acting when they get the chance to do something either dramatically or hard edge crime and stuff. I'll tell you, I love those Walter Matthau police movies. Laughing Policeman with Bruce Dern and of course Charlie Varick, which isn't a police movie, it's a criminal movie, but it's fantastic. And
I haven't seen those in a long time, but definitely those are excellent.
Big fan of that stuff, absolutely. So what, Alex, I understand you're reading Spider-Man and retracing the roots of Spider-Man?
Unexpectedly. So as backstory, when my son was born, he's 3 now, when he was just born, as a new dad, you're up all the time. You have a lot of, I wouldn't say you have a lot of downtime, but you have a lot of time where you're either carrying a kid or you're up late. And so I ended up reading a ton of Stephen King stuff, and I wasn't a Stephen King fan before that. I think I'd read a few things here or there, thinner or like one-offs, but
sure.
I read all the classics. I didn't really get into the Dark Tower much, but I read all the essentials, and that kind of got me through those first few months. And so as we were heading towards our daughter being born, I thought, well, this is probably going to be the same thing. I'll just start reading Stephen King again. I was just kind of bracing myself for an immersive reading experience because there's no way I could have read them all anyway. There's still a couple I haven't read.
Okay.
But I don't know what happened. I just ended up – I think maybe because my son had a Spider-Man coloring book and he started asking me about all the characters and he got so excited. And I was like, I really loved this book and I love these characters. I kept up as best I could. It's hard in the modern comics landscape to keep up too much, but I love Dan Slott's run.
Sure.
And I like Nick Spencer is doing
a hell of a
Archie.
job, yes. Oh, yeah. What's he doing for Archie?
Well, he's writing the main Archie book.
I didn't realize Nick's doing the main Archie book. That's fantastic.
Yeah. He's done a great job.
Oh, that's great.
He hopped on with 700. So anyway, I've kept up to date with the Spider-Man stuff as best I can, but I just got it into my head to start from Amazing Fantasy and just see how far I would go. And so now, I mean, my daughter's maybe 2.5 months old, and I'm at about issue 160, which is the early part of Len Wein's run.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, no, it's been good. It's been really good. And I've read most of these in different bursts, so never sequentially. There's issues that you miss or that you just never got to. And so it's been interesting to watch the momentum build and just kind of see the ebb and flow, the creative ebb and flow. Like, Stan is such a powerhouse and Steve Ditko is amazing. And then I end up listening to like Spider-Man podcasts. There's this great one called, Screw It, Let's Just Talk About Spider-Man. And it's two guys, two brothers. Yeah, no, it's literally that's what it is. But they just cover the Ditko stuff. They cover the Lee Ditko run, which is finite, which is good. And it's two brothers. They're comedians, and it's really entertaining. And they had guys like they had Chip Zdarsky on. They had Joe Quinones. So it's just been something to blow off steam, I guess, as time permits. But it's given me a great new appreciation for stuff like Jerry Conway's run, the art of Ross Andrew, and just how well-paced, it's just an impressive array of creators, and now with Len's run, I don't know if they expect, I've read interviews where Jerry just kind of, I guess he just stormed off or there was an issue and he left. And so you can kind of see Len picking up what's left and resolving Jerry's plot threads, things that we don't see as much in modern comics where everything is, a 5-issue series. We're writing for the trade. We're also, everything's relaunched with such regularity. And I'm not criticizing. I think, the publishers respond to the marketplace and that's what the market demands. But back then, there was never a doubt that you would get to issue whatever, like Spider-Man would continue. And so you had a responsibility to tie up whatever was dangling from the previous thread and set up your own stuff. And you have this these long-running subplots, and it's really cool to see. And it's not Claremont-level subplot where something runs for 200 issues in the background and then pops up, but it's interesting, and Jerry, I think, was really the master of keeping a lot of plates spinning. Stuff like Harry Osborn finding Norman Osborn after he's killed, or the long, Gwen's death. Like there were so many epic things that happened in that 3-year run. And, a lot of people talk about it. It's not like an indie hit or anything, but I still feel like it deserves more acclaim.
It was strong as hell. Absolutely, man. No, very consequential things. The death of Captain Stacy well before Gwen's death. And, no, all that. Because that was Jerry Conway, too, I believe.
No, I think Death of Stacy was Stan.
Yeah, there you go. Because it went from Stan to Jerry and then to Len, correct?
It went from Stan to Roy. Roy Thomas did about 3 fill-in issues. I think he did the Morbius stuff, or the second and third part of the Morbius 3-issue run, and then he did a Craven one-off. And then Stan actually comes back for a few issues, and midway through, he does a 2-parter on the Gibbon, introducing the Gibbon. Now, obviously I've read this recently, so it's fresh in my mind.
No, I'm interested. Go on.
Yeah, and so he does this 2-parter on the Gibbon, but midway through that, Jerry steps in. So Jerry kind of picks up that, and then he's off to the races. And I think that's I want to say issue 110 or 111, and then he's on until about 149. And then Archie Goodwin does a standalone kind of resolving the Clone Saga, and then Len's on it for a while.
Wow, that's cool. I never asked, and I've had Jerry on a couple times. I've never asked him why he left Spider-Man. The next time I talk to him, and I actually should make it sooner than later, just because I love talking. Yeah, I love talking to Jerry, and I always say, the death of Gwen Stacy. I read it in Marvel Tales, the reprint Spider-Man book, and like early 70s, and it blew my mind. I was 9 years old when I read the death of Gwen Stacy, and it absolutely, and not in a bad way. It was such an exciting fictional moment of like real drama, and like the story had consequences. It's not,
and you don't believe it. You almost don't believe it as you're reading it.
Yep.
And there's a moment I think Spider-Man's like, well, I don't know. No, this can't be happening. And as a reader, you're doing the same thing.
Oh, God. No, it's...
Even on reread, I was rereading it, and I was like, well, this is just going to feel like nothing, because I know she's going to die. But then you read it, and you're like, it's impactful. And
the sound effect,
he's just really... I think he's he deserves a lot more credit than I think he gets.
I agree. That's so funny. I was literally making the same argument about Cary Bates and all of his DC output in the 70s to Josh Williamson. And I feel the same way. No, you're 100%. And that's the thing, man. You know, the 70s always gets kind of blown off. I guess Marvel's 70s, I think, gets more of its due. Because DC sometimes, especially Superman, like, oh, that was all the hokey shit. And there was a lot of hokey shit in there. That's where Captain Strong was. And, you know, things like, I just read a back issue article about Microwave Man, that two-parter. And I completely remember reading that when it was brand new.
Well, it's funny because I'm reading these Spidey issues, but a while back I was reading, I think it was right after Len passed, I started rereading his Batman stuff. And that holds up really well. And he introduces so many elements. And then I think he leaves and Jerry steps in. So it's interesting.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I mean, it's not one for one. I'm sure there was a lot of stuff he did in between. But it's interesting now to reread Jerry's run and see Len step in. And Len's sensibility is, I think, much more street level and much more, you know, he's actually funnier. Like, his dialogue with Spider-Man is, at least it makes me laugh out loud more. And then to see the inverse of that on Batman, where Len was doing it first, and then Jerry kind of stepped in. And Jerry had a great run on Batman, and did a lot of the same things he'd done on Spider-Man, in that he played with the classic villains, but also introduced a lot of really good new ones.
That's cool. I also remember his Justice League was a favorite of mine as well. Jerry's Justice League run. Yeah, no, again, it's those Bronze Age writers, man, and artists for that matter. And no, I can appreciate. I'm glad you rediscovered how great Ross Andrew was, man. He and Esposito, great team.
And you know, it's really when Esposito comes in that he goes from B+ to just A+. He's just like out of this world. And I think they were really good friends, as far as I knew. Like, you know, they were just such a tight unit. And I mean, that book had so many great artists. Obviously, Ditko, and then Romita is the defining artist of that early period. And then
Gil Kane.
Gil Kane is just like out of this world. And there was a short run where Gil Kane was being inked by Romita, and those pages are just, I think I was tweeting about it a couple nights ago, and it's just like, it's like bite your hand, so good, like really just magnificent, because he smooths over kind of Kane's quirks, which a lot of people like, and I like too, but that blend of Romita and Kane is insane.
You know, I was lucky, Alex Saviuk, another fine Spider-Man and a million other things artist, when he was doing the Spider-Man daily strip with Stan and Larry Lieber, I actually have two days original art. Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's so great iconic moments where Aunt May is crying about something, and you get that half Peter, half Spider-Man face. And, and the thought bubble says, you know, there's just some things that even Spider-Man can't solve. And it's
well, he was Web of Spider-Man when I was collecting as a kid, and then you had Sal Buscema on Spectacular, who's fantastic. It was just like
quintessential Marvel artist. I mean, and I love both Buscemas, but yeah, Sal especially, just like the entire Marvel universe in his hands.
Oh yeah, no, and he had this kind of leveled up, I think, right as he stepped into Spectacular for the second time, I think with Jerry, and his stuff got looser. And I was reading an interview where he was saying it was because of Bill Sienkiewicz's. He saw Bill Sienkiewicz's art, and he was like, I need to up my game. Like, this guy is blowing the lid off.
Wow, that's great.
And it's so interesting. And ironically, Sienkiewicz, towards the end of Sal's Spectacular run, was inking him.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's really funny.
It was during the Clone Saga, so I don't think a lot of people, the stories were what they were, but the art was spectacular. No pun intended.
No, I'm with you, but that's great, man. No, and it's funny now, and again, you mentioned Sienkiewicz. I think of that period when he took over New Mutants, and everybody's like, who is this guy? This is disgusting. I hate this. And again,
it's so good.
Of course it is. My God.
His Moon Knight is fantastic too. With Doug Bench. Yeah, that's really like high Bronze Age stuff. And
good Lord.
And you could see, Mensch is interesting because he did so much stuff with Moon Knight, and then you see he steps in after Jerry on
Batman.
The Batman.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Yep.
And his style is so literary and poetic almost. It's a lot like Roy Thomas, but he takes it to another level with his captions and thought balloons, and he's really, he's something else.
He and Bates are literally the two Bronze Age writers that I haven't had on the show yet that I would love to track down and have. And there's so many things that Doug wrote. Obviously, Shang-Chi as well. I do. I love his work and always did. And you're right, Moon Knight, both when Moon Knight was in the back of the Hulk magazine, and then when it graduated to the direct market and became its own thing, and Denny O'Neil editing it, and you had Munch and Sienkiewicz. Oh my God, what a book!
Yeah, Denny's influence on Marvel was also underappreciated. I mean, he had that run on Iron Man, but he also, he was smart enough to let Frank Miller hop from just being the artist to writing and drawing.
Yep.
When he could have just very easily said, no, I'm going to grab someone else to keep
or do
going.
it himself, as he ended up doing as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's a thankless job to fill when Frank Miller leaves, and so he did the right thing. He did it himself. But then also, stuff like, Sienkiewicz on Moon Knight and mention Sienkiewicz, because you see Sienkiewicz's art progress as the series goes on, and he gets a little wilder and wilder. In the best possible way. Yep. And then when he hops on New Mutants with Claremont, it just becomes a whole other ballgame.
Absolutely, man. No, and he's still out of control. And coming up with interesting ideas. No, I love Bill. And again, there's another gratifying, oh man, here's a guy that I used to read 35 years ago and was just hanging on every panel and everything. And he's like, hey, John, nice to see you. And I'm like, oh, yay.
Oh, he's such a sweetheart. He's such a good guy. So friendly and kind and giving with his time.
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that Demon Bear saga, I remember I was a big X-Men kid, and then just cracking that open and just having my mind blown. Just like, this is a whole other world that I want to live in.
and I'm disappointed that obviously the movie must be, a ball of confusion, and maybe we'll get it as a Disney Plus streaming thing when it finally does come out, because it's sitting on a shelf. I know that, and it's too bad, because the one byproduct of that I was hoping for, much like with Dave Gibbons when the Watchmen movie happened, was that Bill would get us some spotlight moments and everything, and maybe a nice tick up in the royalties for New Mutants reprints and everything, because it's great stuff, and he deserves the victory lap just like Dave got for Watchmen.
Totally, and I'm excited that he's doing. I think he's doing a one-off with Claremont, kind of set during their run, so that's cool.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I should check in with some Marvel people. I haven't had them on in a while. I saw CB. I wasn't able to go to the C2E2 convention, but I went to a couple after hours things, and I saw CB there and everything. And I'm thrilled. It's Brian and I, Bennett, were just talking, and honestly, I say this with no horse in the race, but it's really cool. I really do think that Marvel and DC both now have good groups of writers and artists that are coming up with good creative ideas. And Brian, because people were asking, now that it's been a couple of years, any regrets, any leftover projects you wouldn't mind getting back to at Marvel? And he's like, honestly, no. He goes, everything's in good hands. And it's easy to go down the list with a lot of people who we've already mentioned, but Hickman coming to the X-Men, and Jason's still doing wonderful work, Aaron, and Zdarsky's, I think, proving himself with every character they let him do. I'm loving his Daredevil right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a motorcycle next to me, but
that's okay, buddy.
It's we talk about this too. The industry is at its best when Marvel and DC are doing well.
Yeah.
When one overpowers the other, and there's always these kind of years or 2 years where either Marvel's on top or DC's on top, and it's never as good for retailers. It's never as good for fans, and so the engagement isn't there. I think it's a really good time for both companies in terms of the content. I know I'm reading more of new stuff than I have in a while. Like Chip's Daredevil, to me, I was telling him this week, actually. I just kind of messaged him and I was like, I'm loving Daredevil. Because it's not the kind of book you think he would write, but he writes it so perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
It just feels like it's so spot on, and it's still of the moment. I think the X-Books are doing well, and I'm excited for Hickman, but I also feel like Matt Rosenberg's stuff has been great, too.
That is a great writer. Absolutely.
Yeah, and he's got such a passion for this continuity. Like, he brings in elements that you haven't thought of since the 90s and makes them cool, makes them cool again. And, you were talking about Bendis and other writers stepping in, but, like Kelly Thompson's Jessica Jones doesn't miss a beat. And,
no, I agree with you.
Yeah.
No, she's terrific. In fact, Brian and I were talking about Kelly and how good she's doing right now. No, absolutely, man. And Slott on Iron Man and Fantastic Four has been a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
And Wade on Doctor Strange, I've really enjoyed that.
I'm bummed it's ending. I mean, I'll read anything Mark does. So,
but excited for Sue Storm. And finally, the Invisible Woman finally gets her own book. I think that's a long time coming.
I'm trying to think what else has been blowing me away. Doomsday Clock was not I did not expect that to be the book that I was like my water cooler book. Like I'll talk to people at work about it. It's just there was something he said in the, Jeff wrote in the last issue that really just kind of set everything on a different axis, without spoiling anything. It was just, he's just really pouring himself into it. And it's, I know there's all the drama about Watchmen and whatever, but it's a good book and it's beautifully drawn. Gary Frank is a fantastic artist.
Great.
Like if anyone were to pick up the baton from Dave Gibbons, it should be Gary. Like he's just got that same flair for art, and he's just amazing. Everything he draws looks perfect.
No, I agree, and I also agree with you in terms of, that's always a huge gamble since the reaction to Before Watchmen and those stories and everything. I confess I really do love these characters and love reading about them, and I as much as it's blasphemous to say, and there were Before Watchmen stories that I enjoyed, and I agree with you. I think Doomsday Clock is more interesting than I expected it to be, and more complex, and I give Jeff a lot of credit. Although, Jeff is the great fixer when it comes to DC. If there's a continuity problem,
I was thinking about it yesterday. Yeah, I think Jeff has the ability to go back and not only make the continuity make sense, but weave in elements from the past and make them feel relevant, and also have them pay off. Yeah. I mean, he was the fixer. He brought back Hal Jordan. He brought back Barry Allen, and I was just thinking a couple days ago how similar he is to what Jerry was doing when he was taking over Spider-Man. He would take things from Stan's run and bring them up, and you'd look at them in a different way, and he'd energize these characters that weren't really three-dimensional. Like Gwen Stacy, she wasn't as compelling a character before Jerry wrote her. And killed her, unfortunately, that happened. But, like Mary Jane was this party girl, but he added a lot of depth to it.
Oh, absolutely. Good Lord. Especially in the wake of Gwen's death and everything, yeah.
Yeah, and Jeff does that too, and so well, and for such long runs. So it's cool to see it all kind of culminate in Doomsday Clock.
I agree with you, man. And I enjoyed the taste of Rucka's Lois Lane that's coming with him and Mike Perkins and Leviathan, and I think Lois Lane can't be in better hands. And the same goes with Fraction and Steve Lieber on Jimmy Olsen. I am very, very excited about
I'm intrigued by that. I mean, I'll read anything Greg writes. He's just one of my favorites, and Fraction for sure. What else am I reading? Obviously anything Brubaker does.
Yes.
Criminals is great.
Oh, and that comic book centric arc was just fantastic and everything. I thought that was a lot of fun. And
yeah, that was neat. And I got a kick. I did an interview with Ed that's I think it's in issue 5.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's me, Jason Starr, who's also done some comics.
I love Jason
novels,
Starr. Yes,
and Sarah Gran, and we're just talking about series characters and different, just the characters that resonate with us, not just in comics, but in novels and in other media. And it was neat. It was really fun. We all did it, like kind of shot each other a bunch of emails, and Ed put it together. And I think Sean Phillips, who's one of the greats, did a bunch of illustrations for it. So if you get the issue, it's worth, obviously the book itself is worth reading, but that was an cool added bonus. And I got a kick out of just being in my own favorite comic, back matter.
No, I think that's excellent. And in fact, I missed the paper issues, and thank God if you do buy it digitally, it does include the back matter.
Yes, it's there. Thankfully.
So yeah, I just finished reading issue 4, so actually I haven't read 5 yet, but I did buy it. And that's excellent. I look forward to it. That's fantastic, man. No, again, that's a great wrinkle of creator-owned books that, and Greg and Michael Lark do the same thing in Lazarus and everything, give us really good back matter. That's just a really fun, I think, innovation of the last 15 years as far as comics.
I feel like you just have to make it so much more experiential and much more, comics, you're spending X amount of dollars that you can be spending somewhere else. So it's got to go beyond just the story. You have to bring the reader into this world. So, Lazarus does it really well. And I think that's just how Greg's brain works. He just kind of thinks in a bigger way in terms of like deeper character stuff and how it fits into the world.
World building, yeah.
Yeah, world building.
I agree with that. I'm reading out, and I haven't had a chance to talk to any creator about this yet, and I'm taking a chance that you might be interested in the subject. Fantagraphics just released Bill Shelley's biography of Jim Warren.
Oh, nice.
And, oh my God, the history of Warren Publishing is incredibly interesting. And it really is that era of 60s New York publishing. and the magazine wars and everything. It's fantastic. I'm really just...
So what's it called? Yeah, now I'm curious to read it.
Oh, God, it's not near me, or I'd tell you, but it's something about monsters. I mean, if you look up Bill Shelley, he's the author, and James Warren, I'm sure you'll find it. But it's, from Fantagraphic Books. Came out in May. And Legacy of Monsters, I want to say.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely check it out. That sounds very much in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. No, I think you'll find it interesting. Well, there you go, Alex. I mean, I wanted to have, beyond pumping the product, to have a chance to kind of bullshit about some of the comic book things that you're enjoying right now and interested in. And
no, this is cool. I mean, this is why I love being on the podcast. It's not just shilling whatever's coming up, but also just kind of talking comics, which is what we're all doing it for, I guess.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed.
We're all fans to some degree.
So I hope to see you at Terrificon, and if not, maybe I'll see you in New York.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, how about Rose City?
I don't know, maybe. Yeah, like I said, travel's a little tricky now, but we'll figure it out.
I hear you, man. It looks like I'll be at Rose City, so
awesome.
Those are the 3 shows that I've got coming up, so there you go. All right, dude. Well,
always a pleasure.
Absolutely, and good luck with the new Pete Fernandez books, winding up the series, and everything else that's coming up for Alex Segura. Nice going, man.
Thanks so much, John.
That's Alex Segura. Don't forget that his book, Miami Midnight, the final chapter in the Pete Fernandez saga, at least for now, comes out August 13th. And you'll be able to get it through Amazon. And if you haven't read any of the books, man, I'm telling you, there are 4 great books waiting for you now, both as ebooks and also paperback novels as well. Totally worth your time. And also hardback as well. Who am I kidding? Great stuff from Alex. And I'm really happy that he's getting recognized for his work in novels, because he's a good writer. And really, Pete Fernandez is a lot of fun. He creates playlists for the various books on his website, and I can't recommend it enough. Plus, all the great stuff that's coming out from Archie continues to entertain me as an old-time Archie reader. I'm thrilled with the directions and creativity that Archie has experienced really since, like we said, The Married Life, when Michael Uslan started shaking things up, and they continue with the Riverdale books and the horror books and the like. All the various Archie meets, whether it's Kiss, which of course Alex wrote, and, Predator, Vampirella and Red Sonja. Hilarious. Great stuff, man. So if you're not reading Archie these days, you don't know what you're missing. I hope that'll give you the opportunity to check out some of the great stuff that Archie's been doing lately. But thanks to Alex, and thank you for listening today. It was all brought to you by, again, the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you, League, for your support. If you want to subscribe to Word Balloon, you can go to patreon.com/wordballoon. And again, Word Balloon brought to you by Aftershocks Comics, who are having a great year, the year of Reading Dangerously. New books that are just coming up. Joe Pruitt's horror anthology, Shock. Joe always wrote great horror anthologies, or I should say edited, and found amazing artists to tell some really cool stories. Again, things in the Vertigo vein, like Joe Pruitt's horror anthology, Shock. There's things like Jimmy's Bastards from Garth Ennis, which easily would have been a Vertigo book. Luckily, Aftershock has it. They have Cullen Bunn's Night Temporal that's coming up soon. And then, or Night's Temporal, if you say it, that's probably the better way to say it. Chris Sabella just started Trustfall, a really fun crime comic that we already had a conversation about, and you'll be hearing that in just a couple days. Matthew Klickstein's You Are Obsolete, just a few of the great new titles that are coming from Aftershock and that cut across genres and take readers far beyond their comfort zones. Again, in the weeks ahead, we'll have more Aftershock creators on talking about their books, but you don't have to wait. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes on these books to order through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Thanks again for listening. Thank you, League, for your support. And, man, it's going to be a hell of a July. These are the closing days of June, and I think we've started summer with a bang. And I promise to maintain the quality. Next episode, let me tease it right now for you. Very excited, a patriotic episode. Chris Sabella talking about his new fine book, Trustfall. And, I can't believe I'm saying this, I get to talk to the Marvel 1970s TV movie Captain America himself, Reb Brown. He made 2 Captain America movies. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen the photographs with the first movie where they have the weird Evel Knievel kind of suit, but they were smart. As soon as they knew they were going to greenlight a second movie, they recut the ending and threw in a scene of Reb on a motorcycle showing up in a traditional Marvel-looking Captain America suit. And that's what we got in the second movie. Plus, God, Reb's in The Howling 2. He made 2 Lou Ferrigno action movies, Cage and Cage 2. He's in a very, I think a film that, I don't know if it took itself seriously or not, but it's a film that Mystery Science Theater made fun of called Space Mutiny. It's a great movie, and Reb is in it with his wife Sissy, and it's terrific. It's so much fun, and it's everything you want in a cheesy sci-fi movie. Like great over-the-top acting, a lot of fun, and Reb was a very credible action hero. I'm not even telling you his best films, like Uncommon Valor with Gene Hackman. Just a lot of other really interesting projects. Plus, he made a lot of good TV movies. He did Fast Break with Gabe Kaplan. Truly one of my favorite 1970s basketball movies. A very funny movie, but really good college basketball in that. And Reb was one of the college team members on that movie. Really great stuff. And we'll talk more about Reb stuff when you hear the conversation I have with him. Chris Sabella and Reb Brown on the next Word Balloon. I hope you'll join us. Until next time, Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions. Copyright 2019.